Hello, everyone. This is Ray Savage with Cambium Networks. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar on cnMaestro, our management solution. The webinar is being recorded and will be placed on the community sometime later today. We'll get that up there. But if you do have any questions or comments during the course of the presentation, please use the question and answer dialog box on the right-hand side of your screen. Well, today it's our pleasure to have with us two of our leading product managers. We have Chetan Habale from our CN Pilot Wi-Fi team, and also Rob Mellencamp, who is leading our development for cnMaestro. So what we'll do is we'll talk a little bit about CN Pilot, what's new there, and then we'll dive into cnMaestro. And don't forget, if you have any questions, just please use the question and answer box. Well, without any further ado, Chetan, we're ready for you.
Thank you, Ray. Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon and good evening, depending on your time zones. And thanks for making time to attend this webinar. Like Ray was saying, we're just going to go through a little bit brief. We're going to step back from the features and the specific descriptions, which is the crux of this webinar, and talk a little bit about the overall vision of what we're doing with cnMaestro and how it fits into Cambium's overall vision for an end-to-end wireless network. Our end-to-end wireless network is what we call a wireless fabric. We've got solutions that are proven in the field to go from 2 meters to 245 kilometers. That reference there to 245 kilometers is a HD video test that we did in the mountains of Colorado and Wyoming. Proving a point-to-point link carrying HD video and voice traffic over a 245 kilometer shot, point-to-point shot. With that said, when you look at Cambium's overall product portfolio, there are roughly three categories of products. They're the point-to-point products or the long-distance wireless products. Those are the products that travel the distance, such as our PTP 820, our PTP 670. And then we have our point-to-multipoint products, or the last mile distribution products like ePMP and PMP 450. They're very popular around the world, connecting residential ISPs. ISPs use them to connect for residential access and also inter-building connectivity. And then in the last 18 months, we've introduced our Wi-Fi product line, which extends our solution to the edge, bringing our solutions to the home, enterprise, public hotspots, and industrial Wi-Fi. And lately, we also launched CN Reach, which extends our solution to the industrial Internet of Things as well. So with our combination of Wi-Fi and CN Reach, we now have solutions that can connect industrial campuses that are hard to reach and farther off. And what's unique about Cambium compared to a lot of the other products that you see in the market is we have a solution that we're building that will now tie all of these things together so that when you have Cambium equipment in any of your properties, distributed or centralized, you have one management window or one single pane of glass, if you will, to look at all of your equipment and interact with all of your equipment. And that is cnMaestro. So cnMaestro is being built as looked at it one way, it's being built as a management, O&M management solution for our long distance point-to-point and Wi-Fi. And then it also serves as a controller for the Wi-Fi network. Just a brief digression into our Wi-Fi network. When cnMaestro is deployed as a Wi-Fi controller, it manages Cambium's enterprise and home Wi-Fi access points. When it's managing our access points, its default configuration is in the cloud, which makes it very easy to deploy Cambium's Wi-Fi equipment or any other equipment for that matter, with features like zero-touch onboarding, which minimize the on-site configuration requirements for our products. And in case of Wi-Fi, you can then set it up either to go in a local breakout or tunnel mode onto the internet. And that's what we call the freedom option. Very, very quick and fast to set up when you use cnMaestro in the cloud. But as a Wi-Fi controller, we've got many traditional deployments where the controller is on campus or on site. And cnMaestro can function as a traditional on-site controller as well. It's available as a free software that you can download from Cambium support site. And in that mode, it can run on any third-party hardware server and act as a controller, taking tunnel traffic or breakout traffic and managing the access points. And that's what we call as our full control option. So you can see that cnMaestro is a very versatile and flexible software that kind of provides you all of the management and all of the services that you need when you run it as a controller. So it's both a management system and a Wi-Fi controller. And so that's what is there today. But really what we're developing cnMaestro is not only as a end-to-end management system across all of our Wi-Fi and our point-to-point and our point-to-multipoint products, but also as something that extends from, if you will, from the birth to the grave. All of the products, whether they be point-to-point, point-to-multipoint, or Wi-Fi, go through a certain life cycle. And cnMaestro is being developed to cover that entire range of interaction that you have with the network from the time it takes birth through the network planning and estimation process, on to the launch, activation, and onboarding process. And then once the network is up and running, to the daily operations and management process. So things like configuration, dashboard stats, notification, reporting, all of these are the features that we've started to make available on cnMaestro and will continue to be available on cnMaestro. And then in the case of Wi-Fi and other such products that we might bring in the future, where there is a substantial service component, where operations are not only dependent upon managing the network, but also upon deploying certain kind of services like hotspot portal, charging, billing, usable analytics for marketing. We will be putting more and more of those features on cnMaestro. Some of these features might be homegrown, and some of these might be third-party features that we might make available that in a way that you can integrate easily through cnMaestro. Today, if you look at these three bullets to the right, launching and activation, O&M, and subscriber monetization, these are features that are already there on cnMaestro and will continue to be developed on cnMaestro. And then the last part that we're going to bring sometime in 2018, more likely, or towards the end of this year, is change management. And what I mean by change management here is every network goes through a transition period where perhaps there is a equipment replacement or there is a new hardware that needs to be inserted into an ongoing existing network. And there is an interaction with a support member where you might be requesting some kind of support and troubleshooting. And cnMaestro will incorporate all of the interaction that you would do with Cambium support as well. So you really don't have to take your eyes off of this single pane of glass when you're managing Cambium's network. And so that's the vision towards which we're developing. And we wanted to share that vision with you. Many of you are loyal customers. And we wanted to give you a sense of where we're going with cnMaestro and how we plan to add value to your network. So with that said, the next part of this presentation will focus on specific cnMaestro features. But I'd like to pause here for a minute and see if you have any questions before I hand off to Rob.
We do have one question, and maybe this one will come up in Rob's part of the presentation. It's when will cnMaestro support email notification for alarm alerting? And I know that one's been on the community for a while, so I think we're ready to have Rob take the microphone.
Rob?
So yes, okay, then could you go to the next slide? So yeah, we'll talk about the email in a couple minutes. So the second part of this conversation is going to be cnMaestro features, and we'll talk about some of the features that we've released recently in our 1.5 version, as well as things that we're working on right now. And we'll start off for the first part with 1.6, which is going to be coming out in September, and then we'll look at our 1.7 series of releases later on this year, which will have some more advanced functionality that we'll discuss shortly. So, take the next slide, please. So, in 1.5, we've made a lot of significant updates to cnMaestro, and one of them, which we're continuing with 1.6, is the separation of essentially views. So we started off with the very sort of fixed wireless centric presentation, and within 1.5 we started to separate out into two views. We have essentially a wireless LAN view in 1.5. Wireless LAN view is for cnPilot enterprise devices, the cnPilot E series, as well as the ePMP hotspot. It provided a simplified navigation. It provided more of a tabular presentation, tables of essentially APs and of sites and of AP groups, and this is available now. We also currently have an access and backhaul view available now that essentially adds a tree. As with access and backhaul devices, with PMP devices, it's nice to be able to see towers and access points and to see the devices that are part of the sector. And so we've kept the tree within the access and backhaul view. And in 1.6, we're going to be essentially taking a lot of the navigation components of the wireless LAN view, and we're going to be essentially also moving them into access and backhaul view. So we'll have essentially two views: wireless LAN view and access and backhaul view, which have a lot of similarities and will feel very common across both of them. But access and backhaul view will be adding a tree, and will make it much more amenable to fixed wireless management. So we have a third view as well that's currently within beta, and which will be released later on this year, and that's called IoT view. And this adds the cnReach devices. The cnReach devices are Cambium devices that allow us to create essentially backhaul to sensors and to actuators within an IoT environment. And there's some additional complexities within IoT view that we don't see with an access and backhaul view. For example, the trees themselves can become very large. And so the IoT view includes the cnReach devices, and it includes some additional functionality to make it easier to manage devices with those requirements. So next slide, Jason. So starting in 1.5.0, we made a lot of sort of initial foundational changes to our presentation. We added a side menu. We started to move within the Wi-Fi view a lot of our menu driven navigation into tabs to make it easier to navigate cnMaestro, and so all the options were visible. And we updated the dashboards for Wi-Fi substantially within 1.5.0. We also completely redid the wireless LAN configuration and updated that too. These changes will be continued on within our next release, within 1.6.0. We're going to be enhancing our system dashboard and making it more similar to our Wi-Fi dashboard. And we're also going to be updating or improving software updates. We get a lot of questions about software update, especially updating sectors and some of the overhead that's required to do that. And so we're going to be simplifying that and providing a new view for that in 1.6. And then moving forward, we've got a list of pages that we're also going to be improving, and those include statistics as well as ePMP and PMP dashboards, etc. So there's a lot of changes that are going to be coming out in 1.6 as well as later on here. So next slide, Jason. So we currently are just wrapping up essentially a beta for our RESTful API, and this essentially is currently supported within on-premises. Go back, Jason. So the RESTful API is supported within on-premises, and right now we're going to have it released in production within 1.6.0. RESTful APIs, especially for web applications, are becoming fairly standardized, and so we're going to be leveraging OAuth 2.0 for authentication. Of course, we'll have HTTPS security. We're going to be supporting our myriad device types within the API, including CM Pilot, ePMP, PMP, as well as CNReach. The first phase of the API is going to include monitoring support, and that means you'll be able to pull alarms, client data, events from different towers and sites and devices. We'll also provide an inventory view, statistics view, which is more sort of runtime information for your devices, and then we also will have a performance view, which provides essentially trending data for the devices within the network. For folks who aren't used to RESTful APIs, they generally return data in a JSON format. Over on the right-hand side, you'll see the JSON. It's just a textual representation. The expectation is that some code will call the API, we'll read this JSON data, and then we'll leverage it. We have a little example in the middle of this picture of we've written. Microsoft has a nice analytics application called Power BI, and what we've done is we've written a little R script adapter so that R script can pull inventory and statistics data from cnMaestro on premises, and then once that's in Power BI, then folks can essentially create their own dashboards based upon the data that we're providing. So that would be one possible application, and other applications can be written by customers. Monitoring is great, but folks are almost more interested in onboarding and configuration and provisioning. We're going to be essentially expanding the monitoring in our 1.7 release later on this year to include those two areas, so that you can have more control over how cnMaestro functions. And then sort of the third phase of this implementation is going to be adding in webhooks. Webhooks is sort of a notification mechanism, which is also becoming very ubiquitous within the cloud space. And in Q1 2018, we're going to be incorporating webhooks so that we can send out alarms from cnMaestro in real time, as well as stream statistics. And we'll be adding in initial integrations with PagerDuty and Splunk, and we're currently looking at other products as well that we can tie webhooks into. So Jason, next slide. Within 1.6.0, we're going to be adding in role-based administration. I think in addition to what Ray mentioned as email notifications, I think role-based administration has been a very big ask from customers. We're going to start off with 4 user roles. It's a very sort of the most basic role. It will be the monitor role, and that will provide read access to cnMaestro administrators. Moving up from monitor, we'll have operator, and operator will be more focused on individual devices, and so you'll have read access to the infrastructure, as well as you can write specific device parameters. Moving up from that, we'll have administrator, which will be global device management. So an administrator would be able to change global configuration for devices, such as global templates, as well as AP groups and WLAN objects. And then stepping up from that, we'll have a concept of a super administrator. And a super administrator will be sort of management across all of cnMaestro. Will be able to edit anything. They'll be able to add users and configure the APIs for access. And then within on-premises, they'll also have access to all the system operations. And so the picture on the right-hand side kind of demonstrates the segmentations and how these different users will have access to the different areas. Next slide, Jason. So in addition to those primary features, we have a number of others that we're going to be releasing next month with 1.6.0. The first is AAA authentication for the on-premises users. So the cnMaestro login users will now be able to leverage CATX Plus or our Active Directory in order to log into cnMaestro. We're going to be adding in a captive portal certificate on-premises. So right now with on-premises, there's a warning when customers use Captive Portal, and will allow administrators now to create either CSRs, certificate signing requests, or to update their own sign certificates and keys to like a cnMaestro to be used within their within the Captive Portal. We're going to be adding in a very basic on-premises SNMP management. cnMaestro moving forward is going to be looking, primarily to the RESTful API, as well as to webhooks for most interaction within cnMaestro. The on-premises SNMP management is going to be very targeted for customers who want essentially basic statistics and simple traps. But the first phase of that will be within next month. Administrator session management means that you'll be able to view the administrators that have logged in, and if for some reason you want to log somebody out, you're able to do that. And then we're going to be adding in this ability to recover essentially UI login access. So we don't happen too frequently, but once in a while, folks will forget the passwords that they use to log into cnMaestro on premises, and so we'll provide a way to automatically resolve that problem. So next slide, Chaitan. So the features that we just talked about are essentially features that are complete, and they're in test right now. The plan for them is to release them in early September. So the next set of features we talk about are the ones that we're currently working on in development, and I sort of listed them as 1.7.x because we're probably going to break them up into two releases, 1.7.0 and 1.7.1 in Q4, and the exact sort of separation isn't completely defined yet, but we'll essentially be prioritizing them after 1.6. So Chaitan, next slide. So the first primary feature is going to be enhancing our reporting functionality. So right now, cnMaestro within the 1.5 release does have a lot of reports that can be essentially extracted. So we have a concept of data reports where you can essentially download a CSV versions of inventory data and statistics data and trending data, which is what we call performance, as well as alarms and events. So those can be exported as CSV. The tables that we have within cnMaestro also generally allow an export to CSV or to PDF. As I said before, we have a beta for RESTful API. So RESTful API allows you to extract substantial monitoring data from cnMaestro, and that will be released in production in 1.6.0. The challenge with these is that these are all targeted to essentially to devices essentially, or to programs. So CSV data is leveraged within Excel, or it's leveraged within Microsoft Power BI or Tableau. It's not really directed to user consumption. So right now for user consumption, we have our dashboards and we have our statistics pages, and we're going to be enhancing those to include graphical reports as well later on this year. So cnMaestro has many different device types, and so we're going to be separating out the reports largely based upon those. So shared reports would essentially be reports that aggregated all the devices within the system. So an overall inventory report and an overall alarms report would fit into that. For fixed wireless, we'll be adding in TMP AP and TMP SM reports. And for Wi-Fi, we'll be adding in a number of reports for Wi-Fi APs as well as for sites. And at a later time, not within 1.7, but we'll be including other reports such as WLAN reports, client reports, etc. And so what you see on the right-hand side are essentially two engineering mock-ups. They haven't been stylized yet for the types of data. We'll essentially have a rich sort of graphical presentation to provide an overview. Then we'll also have tabular data to provide more details in what we're presenting. Reports are helpful being downloaded, but we also want to add essentially being able to schedule report generation as well as being able to add emailing. And then within, over the end of 2017 and into 2018, we'll also increase the capability of essentially accessing reports by adding in the ability to do them, sort of at specific times and recurrence, etc. So reports will be essentially first released in 1.7, and we'll be enhancing them throughout subsequent releases. Next slide, Chapin. So another substantial feature that's going to be coming out soon is our MSP feature. This is essentially the ability within cnMaestro to create branded management accounts. So in this picture, we see that we have a single cnMaestro installation, and the MSP administrator is essentially the cnMaestro administrator. It's the standard administrator that we have. And so this administrator will be able to create managed accounts within cnMaestro. And in these managed accounts, they can assign to what we're calling tenant administrators. And so within this graphic here, the MSP administrator has created 3 managed accounts and assigned 3 tenant administrators, essentially their customers, to manage them. The MSP administrator will have a management UI that's fully integrated into the current cnMaestro UI. So essentially, MSP is not going to require a second special MSP UI. Within your current cnMaestro UI, you will say that you want to support MSP, and then the MSP functionality will be enabled. It'll be fully integrated into the tables and the tree and the presentation that cnMaestro currently supports. The tenant UI will also be essentially in this first phase, it will be the exact same UI as that we expect within cnMaestro. It won't have, of course, tenant management. It won't have management that's sort of specific to the global administrator. But otherwise, it's going to have the full suite of cnMaestro management functionality, AP groups, networks, WLAN objects, bytes, all of that. And so the tenants themselves will have their own subset of configuration. The MSP administrator will be able to visualize all of the configuration from their instance of cnMaestro. Next slide, Chapin. So as I mentioned, full cnMaestro environment for tenants, and the global administrator will also have a standard cnMaestro infrastructure and visuals to manage their tenants from their side. We're going to be supporting this first in on-premises, but the cloud should come pretty quickly thereafter. CN Pilot is the priority in terms of devices, but we will also support ePMP and TMP, and we may also support CN Reach. Right now, the use case for that isn't quite clear, but there's nothing really that prevents that. Essentially the tenants themselves will have their own UI, and that UI can be branded essentially to reflect the branding of the managed service provider. And when we talked about the API previously, I mentioned that this year we're focusing in on getting provisioning and configuration integrated into the API, and that's going to be very important for MSP, because while you'll have a UI and you can start essentially creating accounts for your customers, the real sort of holy grail of this is to make it completely automated, so that you can essentially create these accounts, you can configure them, and you can add devices in an automated fashion through a CRM. And so the API integration would allow one to do that. And so this is MSP is in hot development right now, and we're targeting to release that in the next few months. So next slide, Jason. So some additional 1.7.x features. The first is email notifications. Right now we're looking to get that into October. So I'll give you a date for that because we know that that's a high priority, and that kind of affects folks excitement about using cnMaestro as a daily management system. We're looking at also working in sector visualization into the 1.7 release. This would be kind of a basic initial support for configuring azimuth, height, elevation, and then being able to view sectors in the cnMaestro map. As I said before, we're going to be continuing to enhance the UI with statistics pages, with dashboards for the fixed wireless devices, and we have a whole list of pages that we're going to be improving. I mentioned TACX and Active Directory. We'll be also adding in Radius on-premises AAA authentication for cnMaestro users later on this year. And then cnReach support is in beta right now, and that will become part of our standard production release later on this year in both cloud and on-premises. And so that is that's sort of let's take the next slide. I think that's the final slide. Yeah. So that kind of is our is sort of what we're doing right now on the cnMaestro team. And I think Jason and I are here to answer any questions as best we can.
Yeah, and Rob, thank you very much. We do have a bunch of questions, and I've been trying to answer a few of them as we go along. I think the most popular question was on the email notifications. People are hearing the words October of this year. Is that correct?
Yes, that is a priority for us.
Good. Good. This question came in from a network operator. Is there a version of the web interface in Spanish?
So we don't have one in Spanish yet. We haven't defined essentially we haven't committed to essentially to an internationalized version of that yet. So I don't have a specific date for it.
Okay, thanks. The next one is about scheduling software upgrades. When will cnMaestro allow upgrades to be scheduled?
So right now with scheduled upgrades, we are definitely by Q1 of 2018. We are looking at right now. We do have a side project where we're essentially trying to do this for a specific use case, and we may open this up to the wider audience if it seems like it's going to be useful and in a general form. So there's the possibility of Q4, but right now the more definite date would be Q1 of 2018.
Okay, thank you. And the next question is about role-based administration. The question is, will role-based administration allow for segmentation of the network so that only a subset of the entire global data can be viewed?
So that's a great question, and we're looking at sort of doing that through a mixture of our current role-based system as well as through MSP. So MSP, as presented in this presentation, essentially makes it into something that one would use to provide access to separate tenants, branded access. But we do have another use case where we have companies essentially that want to essentially provide regional segmentation of their customers. So they want to, so they sort of have a central NOC, and that central NOC is owns the essentially the wireless infrastructure across the entire company. But they do also have sort of regional NOCs or regional IT centers, and they want to provide those regional centers with specific access to only a subset of devices, full access, so they have ownership of those devices. They can change the AT groups, they can change the wireless LAN configuration, they can set up their own sites and all of that. And so the MSP view that we're providing will have an option where you don't have to essentially use a brand the system. Essentially, you can use it to segment out sort of chunks within your organization, and those chunks will be essentially completely autonomous, and you can give management access to users to manage those subsets. And I think that essentially will provide sort of the same functionality. We're also adding into to MSP, which I didn't talk about, is that when you separate out essentially multiple tenant accounts, you can also provide a single tenant administrator that can manage a subset of these accounts. And so for example, maybe you had a bunch of stores and you wanted to essentially to give each store owner complete access to to their own account so they can manage it. And then at a higher level, you wanted to give sort of the regional manager access to all of those accounts. And at the highest level, you don't want to have your global IT, or your global IT should have access to all the regional systems. And so we could do that within the MSP framework. Essentially, we can create essentially separate MSP tenant accounts for each store. We can assign a regional manager so that they have access to all three of those accounts, and they'll have a single UI as well. They'll log in the upper right-hand corner, just like with normal cnMaestro. You can choose which store you want to manage as the regional manager. But then the global IT user would have access to everything, and they would essentially be the primary owner. So we're looking at, instead of creating separate complexity or a separate infrastructure for that, we want to essentially leverage the same infrastructure that we're building for MSP to support that use case.
Okay, and this next question kind of follows on to software updates. And the question revolves around the issue of what if during the course of that there's a failure. So the network operator says, could you please provide an option for updates to continue even if there is a failed upgrade? For example, if I'm updating 200 routers, I don't want the job to pause because router number 5 failed for any reason.
I think that we have that. Maybe that's not working correctly. So I'll follow up on that with the engineering team if there's an issue with that I'm not aware of. So yeah, but okay. I agree. Yeah, we should have that option if it's not present.
Okay. Here's another one about functions and users. Does the on-premises cnMaestro support audit log features? For example, one of our network elements was deleted by some user. Would we be able to check which user credential deleted that network element and the time that it was deleted?
So audit log is right now it's currently targeted for Q1. We essentially have a full spec for that, and the priority for that would be sort of after HA for on-premises. So we didn't talk about on-premises HA and some of the changes that are going to be coming with that in 1.8. I sort of left this presentation at 1.7. So 1.9 after 1.8 in that release, which would be probably towards the end of Q1, we're looking at essentially integrating in a significant audit logging functionality, and then expanding that later on in Q1 to also provide essentially audit logging functionality for configuration as well. So audit logging would start off with essentially administrative audit logging, keeping tabs of essentially all of the functionality that users within cnMaestro, the administrators, that they do, so that one can go back and troubleshoot issues that occurred. That right now is tracking to Q1. After that, we would be looking at essentially being able to audit log, audit specific configurations. So essentially, view dips from the configuration of devices as they change, and making the whole sort of configuration infrastructure a lot more robust. And so that part of audit logging would be after probably after Q1, probably somewhere within Q2.
Okay. Obviously, Link Planner and cnMaestro work hand in hand together. This question kind of touches on that. Do we have any tools for site survey or importing floor plans in cnMaestro? So we don't have that.
we don't have that. We don't have that yet. Sort of when we start talking about Link Planner and cnMaestro, there is a lot of discussion between the two teams about sort of how to move forward and how to start taking some of that functionality and tying them together better. And so that also is the priority for ours. But right now it's not available within cnMaestro, and I think we probably can't talk too much about it within this presentation with authority.
Right, a lot of capabilities are in Link Planner today. So if this person's looking to solve the problem, that might help.
Yep, and this is Chetan. I can add a little bit more. There's also a question on floor plans there, which I'm assuming is in the context of Wi-Fi. But so if the site survey is for Wi-Fi, we support third-party tools like Ekahau and Air Magnet, and very shortly we'll be supporting IBWave as well. And eventually, like Rob said, we do plan to integrate some of these third-party options into cnMaestro, where they provide a lot of sophisticated options. And eventually we'll pull in Link Planner as well. But this will be a little bit farther out into middle or later half of next year. And again, that's just plan of intent, but we will share specific details as we get closer to that.
Great, thank you, Chetan. Rob, another question about Maestro. Is there an option in the dashboard to see all the devices that are connected to an access point instead of only onboarded devices?
Okay. So right now there isn't, but so I'm assuming that this would be essentially the fixed wireless question of, I'm only seeing the SMs that are essentially onboarded within cnMaestro, and so so we are looking at adding that, but right now we don't have that.
Okay. This next one is, when will on-premises cnMaestro support bulk backup file downloading? For example, we would like to back up from one network folder, which contains maybe 100 links or so.
So I'm not sure I fully understand the question. Is it so bulk backup, meaning just bulk configuration backup of configuration within cnMaestro instead of backing up everything, including statistics, which is what we currently have with our export?
Yeah, I think that's correct.
I don't have an answer for that either.
So Rob, I think if I can add a little flavor to that question, and Arisu or whoever asked the question, please feel free to clarify. Basically, the user here has 1,800 links, and the pain point is really that they have to log into each unit to download the backup files. So I'm guessing the problem here really is configuration backup of individual device units.
Okay. So now I get it. So we're looking at, so we actually do have, and I didn't talk about this as well within this presentation, but we kind of have a parallel configuration backup sort of path that we're doing, and it's going to be starting off with essentially sort of a basic backup of sort of the object-based configuration that we have, as well as the template. So essentially backing up what's currently within cnMaestro. And the expectation is that the first phase of that will most likely be by the end of this year. This is a separate path, and we're not sort of tracking this as part of the specific 1.7 release. So the second phase of that, I talked about a little bit in terms of the configuration auditing. So when we start to add configuration auditing, we need to essentially maintain access to the specific configurations of devices that that we're managing. And starting in 2018, essentially first quarter, we will start giving customers the option of having cnMaestro store backup backups to the to the fixed wireless devices within cnMaestro, and we'll set it up so that there'll be a certain number of backup versions that we would store. Once we start to maintain that information within cnMaestro, then we'll be able to essentially to provide an option to export and import that data. And we do have essentially a spec that's written for this functionality. It's just finding the it's just prioritizing it and completing the development. But so right now we're looking at, just to be safe, probably first half of 2018, where we'll be able to essentially, cnMaestro will start storing more data from the devices, including current configuration, being able to provide the ability to compare configurations and to do display configuration, and also the ability to be able to export just configuration and to do a configuration backup of all the devices within your network and a restore. So first half of 2018 is what we're looking at.
Okay. This next question deals with forcing subscriber modules and cnMaestro data. Could you force subscriber devices to inherit the cnMaestro settings of the servicing AP? Meaning, I configure my on-premise server address in the AP, then any client radio that connects will use the same settings of the AP unless manually overridden.
So we could look into that. I remember that when we developed this, there were a lot of questions about how much we wanted to we wanted to share. So Ray, could you just cut and paste that and then send it to me, and then we'll have to look at that in more depth. I think that there's some complexities within this area that are somewhat difficult to respond to quickly.
Yep, I understand, and I'll send you all the questions. The next one, can cnMaestro support auto onboarding features without key in the Cambium ID or MAC address? Meaning, as long as it's the same network, it should be available for approval.
So there's something of a there's a difference between cloud and on premises with the onboarding. Within cloud, it's trickier. Because it's essentially a shared environment, and we have a lot of tenants within on premises. It's somewhat easier. Yeah, it's kind of tough to that's also kind of a tough question to to respond to right now too, just because there's complexity involved. So let's table that and then we can review it and come back with an answer.
All right. Here's one. Any comment on when a differentiation between cnMaestro Pro version versus the standard editions will be introduced? And you might want to define what is Pro and what is standard. Just give folks a background of the question, even.
Right. So cnMaestro right now is the current version of cnMaestro has a number of tags in a couple of our features that say Pro. I think that the two features right now are our data reports have a Pro tag, auto provisioning in on-premises has a Pro tag, APIs would have a Pro tag, and a bunch of the things that we sort of talked about today would also have a Pro tag. So the expectation is that the features that don't have a Pro tag are going to continue to be free. And the features that are released with Pro tags would become part of a sort of our Pro feature set. And the Pro feature set would essentially, right now we're looking at essentially selling it as feature groups. So if somebody, for example, purchased a particular feature group, then they would get a list of Pro features as part of that feature group, and then those would be essentially added on to the baseline cnMaestro functionality. So we should have essentially so we will have essentially a basic feature set folks to for folks to do management in cloud and on premises. That's free. And then the pro features essentially will at some point become part of these feature sets. We're going to start essentially rolling out an initial sort of more visibility for pro later on this year with it'll essentially become more visible within cnMaestro. And so, for example, if one essentially is going to download the on-premises version, we'd like to essentially have folks essentially tie the on-premises version to a cnMaestro account within the cloud, so that we can at least sort of map the Cambium ID, which our support team uses to the devices that are within a customer within a customer account. And so we'll start making sort of this infrastructure a little bit more visible. When we're actually going to be sort of turning it on and presenting, these are the specific feature sets that and the specific features that will be a part of them. That's still under discussion internally. I think a lot of the stuff that a lot of the sort of the significant features are going to be coming in Q4 and in Q1. Certainly when we talk about auditing and when we talk about configuration backup, configuration essentially auditing, those types of things would be considered pro features, and we expect them to be part of a specific pro package.
Okay, thank you. We do have one last question, just because time is running short here. But I'd like to remind everybody that Rob and his team are already very active on the community, where you can post your questions and interact directly with them and other network operators. And the community is all free, and you can get there by typing in community.cambiumnetworks.com and look for the cnMaestro area there. So here we go, Rob. Will it be possible to enable Microsoft accounts to the portals instead of only Office 365 Enterprise accounts for verification as it is currently in 1.5?
Jason, that's a question for you.
Yeah. So, Ray, if you can repeat the question, is it Office 365 versus Microsoft? Did I hear the word portal?
Yes. Will it be possible to enable Microsoft account to the portals instead of only Office 365 as it is currently?
I'm probably not understanding the question. What a Microsoft account is. If it's an Active Directory account, yes, you can. That's what we're enabling. And if it's and eventually we'll do external AAAs as well. But if there's a specific question that perhaps I'm not understanding, perhaps the question we can clarify. And if you can answer that here, maybe we'll follow up with an email, a one-on-one email.
Well, he says it's just a general Microsoft account, not only 365.
Okay, so I'm guessing that's Microsoft's version of the Active Directory on the backend, or LDAP based. So if that is the case, we will eventually extend authentication option for both admins and users to use the regular Microsoft account, which is Active Directory.
Okay, thank you. And Rob, I think this one is for you, because I did promise you a last question. Currently, cnMaestro supports data storage up to 1 week. Can this be extended longer, let's say to 3 months, before the old data is overwritten? This is mainly to keep information such as frequency allocations and things like that.
Yes, and so that also fits into Pro. And so when we roll out Pro, we'll be rolling out essentially an option to maintain data for longer term. So the free accounts will remain at would be at 1 week, and then to extend back, data storage for a longer period would become part of Pro, and that's probably going to be one of the first things that we roll out when we start making Pro, more central to the release.
Great, thank you very much. Thanks everybody for your questions and your time. Thank you, Rob, and thank you, Chetan, and we look forward to seeing everybody on a future webinar, or certainly join us at community.cambiumnetworks.com. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.